Hi, I'm winter-simat. Welcome back to Conscious Educators, where we look at this potential role of education in contributing to human transformation towards more integrated ways of being in the world, as well as cultural evolution towards more regenerative ways of being together. What I want to talk about today is transformative learning. And I know there's a lot of content on this topic, but I want to look at the art and science of how we change. And in particular, I want to look at three models that might help us, for one, participate in our own continued growth and transformation as educators, but also to help guide others, the people that we work with, to become more active participants in their growth and change process. I'd like to start by just affirming that transformation, I believe, is a human birthright. It's one of our most powerful gifts. It's actually perhaps a core definition of who we are in this world. We can't help but change and grow and transform. It's just in us. We will adapt and change to whatever environment we are born into, whatever culture or time period. We will fully adapt and be in that environment more than any other organism or form of life on Earth. So this is a core definition of who we are. I would go so far as to say that we should be called human becomings rather than human beings, because this is so central to who we are. And I think that there's been this age-old debate of, are we primarily formed by nurture or nature? Is it our genetics and DNA and lineage or heritage that determines who we are, or is it our environment? And I think that overwhelmingly we're finding now that it's nurture or environment that has a profound impact on who we become. Nature or our genetics sets body plans and templates and dispositions and some personality traits, but far and beyond, it's nurture, it's environment, it's culture, it's all the things after we're born that are impacting who we become. Epigenetics is showing that we can actually change our genetics from our environment in our lifetime. So we are incredibly adaptable and changeable beings. Now, the process of this and our ability to actively participate in it, I think, is really important. So these three models we're going to look at today. One is sort of this balance or inclusion of both stability and adaptability, and how we need both of those. The second is a transformative learning cycle. We'll use a triangle going from knowledge to understanding to wisdom and back to knowledge. That cycle or spiral of transformation. The third one is going to be looking at nurture or how we transform in environments, and we're going to break that actually into two parts. That environmental impact is actually from exteriors outside of us, but also from interiors where we can change from the inside out as well. So first of all, we're going to look at this sometimes appearing paradox of stability and adaptability. And I think that it's not really a paradox, but it appears that way in our culture. What we see actually in most organisms is that there are systems they have that promote stability. They're slow to change, and they create a sense of coherence and ongoingness. But there's also systems in that organism that are quite adaptable, and they have creative responses to novelty or environmental change, and they promote rapid transformation. And it's actually only by bringing both of these together that you have something that is both stable and adaptable. And that means that it's actually quite anti-fragile. Resilient isn't quite the word we can use, but anti-fragile actually thrives on change in these incremental ways that don't overwhelm it, but allow it to grow and change and become more fit or more honed to its environment. So I think we need to look at both of these and make sure that we're bringing both into our lives, into our educational approaches, into our culture, that we are promoting both stability and adaptability. Sometimes this can be divided by age or culture. We often see those that are advanced in years maybe prioritizing stability because of the stage of life they're in. And those that are younger might prioritize adaptability or transformation and change. What I think we need to do is actually bring both together in mutual honor and respect. That's part of the reason that I think intergenerational learning is so important. So the second model that I want to look at is this transformative learning cycle, which operates not in a circle, but I think in a spiral. We could start with knowledge and then to understanding and wisdom. So in this area of knowledge, this is the area of discovering new information, encountering maybe a disorienting dilemma, something that conflicts with what we already know. Now, when we encounter new information that confirms what we already know and is in agreement, we tend to take that new information on pretty readily. We all fall victim to the confirmation bias, where when something agrees with what we believe, we take it really easily. Something that maybe is in conflict with our worldview or belief system or what we know, we tend to very quickly reject or ignore. Now, in a transformative learning community that's really healthy, we might help encourage each other to, rather than throw out those things that conflict with what we know, to actually hold them aside. We don't have to take them on right away, but we don't reject them. We hold them here, and we might feel some tension, but we don't throw them out. In Thomas Kuhn's ideas of scientific paradigms, he would call those anomalies. They don't fit. But if we hold them there and create some space for each other, we can start to look at how it might fit in a larger worldview or a larger paradigm. And this is where we're stretched a bit, and we need people that we love and trust around us to help us in this process. So this is moving from knowledge then down to understanding. And I think that this process from knowledge to understanding is what Jordan Hall and others would call sense making. How do we make sense of that new information that doesn't fit in our paradigm? Now, it requires coming to a new place, a deeper place of understanding. Understanding is that space of how things fit together and are ordered and structured. What are those relationships like? It's bringing things together and integrating them. So often with new information, we need a larger worldview or understanding. With others, we can do that process of sense making. Now, from understanding, we can get stuck there and just move back and forth. Sometimes we kind of get stuck in our heads where we're just gaining information and integrating it, but we're not actually applying it to our lives. And that can be a bit of a pathological cycle to get in. So from understanding, I think in a healthy transformative learning community, we will move towards what I call wisdom stage. And that is around integrating this understanding into our actions and choices and lifestyles, what we do and how we act in the world. This brings about, ideally, wisdom, but also love, compassion, all these other virtues, because it requires this choice making along the way. So from knowledge to understanding with sense making, now from understanding to wisdom, we have choice making. How do we actually enact this out and live this out in the world? New ways of acting, which leads to this wisdom, which is a new, more integrated way of being in the world. Now, this new, more integrated way of being in the world requires us to return back to knowledge. Because once we've come to a new, not just understanding, but way of being in the world, it renews this sense of curiosity and wonder about the world, because we're actually seeing everything anew and afresh. And so we go back out into the world and we rediscover. That's when we move back to knowledge. And I think that this stage, from wisdom back to knowledge, I would call world making, or what some philosophers have called worlding. This is an outward focus. This actually creates or generates culture and the space in between us. So this brings that transformation and sends it back out to the world. So this cycle, of course, it continues in a healthy, transformative learning environment. The third model in transformative learning I want to look at is how change happens not only from the outside in, but also from the inside out. So I would say that there's this concept of interior and exterior originating change. Now, normally we look at the paradox between in nature and nurture, and we say nurture is always from the outside coming in. So that space would be the exteriors, family of origin, community, culture, maybe the societal systems that we live in. These are all the things that are changing us from the outside in as osmosis. We're born into them, we encounter them, and they really can form our character and who we are and who we become. Now, I think this is primarily how in the modern world we've seen change and transformation. And in education, that's the dominant paradigm. But I think equally important is transformation that comes from the inside out. Now, this is the area of the interiors, so beauty and spirituality and consciousness. This is where our values, our beliefs, our meaning structures, our uniqueness, our I amness, from the ground of being coming out. And this actually transforms us and can transform the community or the environment that we're in as well. So I think we need to be doing both of these in a healthy, transformative education paradigm. We can help set the culture. We can also encourage our learners to develop an interior space that comes out of them and contributes to culture, so that there's a reciprocal relationship between these two. Now, I think that there's times when maybe one might be prioritized over the other. Now, if you find yourself in some amazing protopian society where everything is happening very beautifully and it's a regenerative culture, and yes, there's some minor changes to make, but primarily it is a beautiful expression of humans living in the world with each other, with the natural world, then I would say that transformation from the exterior in could be prioritized. Young people growing up in that kind of culture, it would be quite important for them to really understand why those things are done and how important they are. Now, if you find yourself in a society or culture that is quite destructive or unhealthy or even extinctionary, then we might want to prioritize some of the interior development that comes out and transforms culture. Now, of course, we need both, but I think we can prioritize or at least acknowledge that that has been downplayed or ignored in the past. So I think in education, of course, we need to do both. We can set these alternative ways of doing things in the realm of education, not cloistered bubbles that are protected from society, but experimental spaces that might be contrary to some of the unhealthy aspects of society. And then we can also encourage young people to discover the I amness that is in them, the character, the values, the beliefs, the goodness that can well up from them that can contribute to innovating that culture, that experimental space that we've created. I think that kind of dynamism is really powerful in transformative learning. So I hope you enjoyed this look at transformative learning and these 3 models. You can always email me if you have questions or if you'd like to book in a set of workshops on this topic. So thanks for joining me, and thanks for being a part of this bigger transformation of education and culture that we're all contributing to. I'll see you next time.